Revelations.Unveiled.Detroit. All praises, family. This is Revelations.Unveiled.Detroit. We are back together again as the children of Israel, the scattered tribes of the house of Jacob, sent into global bondage all over the earth into the four parts for our disobedience to the covenant. And family, as the spiritual stew is being stirred, as the carnal ingredients are being stirred, agitated, and fomented, we're seeing the escalation of the freeing of the children of Israel from their bondage from the various nations all over the earth. And so this presentation or reading of an article is in the continuing spirit of reparations, the compensation or retribution for centuries of servitude and chattel captivity. And today we will be focusing on 14 Caribbean nations who are making a legal claim for reparations against their former European colonizers. And we began. 14 Caribbean nations sue Britain, Holland, and France for slavery reparations that could cost hundreds of billions of pounds. Countries demanding compensation for awful legacy of Atlantic slave trade have hired lawyers who won payouts for Kenyans tortured in the 1950s. Britain also compensated slave owners £20 million in 1834, which is the equivalent of $200 billion in today's economy. So family, the Britons compensated the former slave owners for their loss of property, so the slave owners themselves received reparations. The idea of reparations in the United States has surfaced, but none has been paid. It is an escalating tenet of today's political climate. Britain is being sued with France and the Netherlands by 14 Caribbean countries demanding what could be hundreds of billions of pounds in reparations for slavery. Around 175 years after Britain freed its last slaves in the West Indies, an alliance of Caribbean nations is demanding to be repaid for the awful lingering legacy of the Atlantic slave trade. CARICOM, a group of 12 former British colonies together with the former French colony, Haiti, and the Dutch-led colony or the Dutch-held colony of Suriname, believes the European governments should pay, and the United Kingdom in particular. It has hired the British law firm Lee Day, which recently won compensation for hundreds of Kenyans tortured by the British colonial government during the Mau Mau rebellion of the 1950s. CARICOM has not specified how much money they are seeking, but senior officials have pointed out that Britain paid slave owners £20 million or pounds when it abolished slavery in 1834. That sum would be the equivalent of 200 billion pounds today. In the United States, the idea of reparations has surfaced a number of times over the years, but has never been paid out. At the end of the Civil War, around 400,000 acres of land in Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina were taken from former slave owners and earmarked for freed slaves. But the decision was reversed by President Andrew Johnson after President Abraham Lincoln's assassination in 1865. It was noted by Al Jazeera America. In 2008, Barack Obama, President of the United States, said he did not support reparations for the descendants of slaves, going against the views of around 24 members of Congress who sponsored legislation to create a commission on slavery. In the same year, the House apologized for slavery, with the Senate following suit in 2009, but neither mentioned compensation. In its lawsuit, CARICOM claimed slavery condemned the region to a poverty that still afflicts it today, and they are comparing their demand to the German compensation of Jewish people for the Holocaust and New Zealand compensating the Maoris. The awful legacy of these crimes against humanity ought to be repaired for the developmental benefit of our Caribbean societies and all of our people, say Ralph Gonsalves, the Prime Minister of the tiny St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He called it a historic wrong that has to be righted. Vereen Shepherd, who is coordinating Jamaica's demands for reparations, said the slave ancestors got nothing when they were freed. They got their freedom and they were told, go develop yourselves, she said. Critics have pointed out that many of CARICOM's members are hardly poor, including millionaires and millionaire havens such as the Bahamas and the Barbados. Prime Minister Tony Blair of the United Kingdom expressed regret for the unbearable suffering caused by Britain's role in slavery in 2007, but made no mention of financial compensation. Britain has said that paying reparations for slavery is the wrong way to address an historical problem. CARICOM insists they are hoping to reach a settlement with the European countries and will only take legal action if talks collapse. A CARICOM Reparations Commission has been set up to work out what should be paid and how much, led by Barbados historian Sir Hilary Beckles. Sir Hilary says they are focusing on Britain because it was the largest slave owner in the 1830s. The British made the most money out of slavery and the slave trade. They got the lion's share, and importantly, they know how to convert slave profits into industrial profits, he said. Some CARICOM countries already get financial aid from Britain and other Commonwealth countries. Martin Day, the British lawyer who is advising CARICOM, told the Daily Mail he doubted it would affect their membership of the Commonwealth. I know they are hoping they can resolve this amicably rather than having to take matters through the world courts, he said. He said, our advice has been that the Caribbean states should be claiming in relation to the impact of the slave trade on the Caribbean today, rather than looking for reparations related to what happened to slaves historically. So wow, family, you see, these European nations, these Arab nations, all nations who participated directly in the slave trades, the sub-Saharan and transatlantic, they all would issue an apology, but no one is stepping up with any tangible compensation. They all want to take the land and the loot and the minerals and the resources and the historical statues and items of these nations they imperialize. They want to benefit from the profits of that work from those bodies over the course of centuries, and then converted those profits into modern industrial industries, banking, insurance, all industries, food, health. All of those were started under the corrupt satanic profits of the slave trade, which persisted in excess of centuries. So the descendants of this horrible crime of history against humanity have never benefited from that crime. And there is no statute of limitations on murder. So, as these populations globally of the diaspora begin to demand reparations, compensation, land distribution from all of these nations that participated and benefit from that captivity, there will be no resolve. There will be no settlement. There is only one way to fix it. Pay in full. Cut the check. And in family, and until we are together again, I love you. I love you. I love you. This is Revelations.Unveiled. Detroit.